I found out my entire life was a lie in a room that smelled like old wood, cheap cologne, and quiet judgment. And the craziest part, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. Because the second that sentence hit the air, something inside me didn't break. It finally made sense. Read it out loud. My own voice sounded calm, too calm. The lawyer hesitated. Everyone in the room leaned forward like they were about to watch a car crash in slow motion. Then he read it. Lena Carter is not David Carter's daughter. Her biological father is. He stopped for half a second. Just long enough for my sister to smirk. William Hayes. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The suffocating kind. Like the air got sucked out of the room and nobody knew how to breathe anymore. My brother stood up so fast his chair slammed into the wall. What the hell is that supposed to mean? My sister, perfect, polished, always 2 steps ahead Madison, just stared at me, not shocked, not confused, calculating, like she was already figuring out how to use this, and me, I just sat there. Because suddenly, every single moment of my life started rearranging itself like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. Oh, that's why. That's why I never looked like them. That's why my mom used to pause before introducing me. That's why family photos always felt off. That's why I was always just slightly outside the frame. I leaned back in the chair, exhaled slowly, and said the only thing that made sense. So that's why she hated me. No one laughed. No one corrected me, because deep down, they knew it was true. 3 weeks earlier I got the call at exactly 9:12 a.m. I remember the time because I was staring at my computer screen pretending to care about a spreadsheet, while my coworker argued about oat milk in the break room. Normal day, boring day, the kind of day you don't expect your life to split in half. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello, is this Lena Carter? His voice was smooth, professional, the kind of voice that delivers bad news for a living. Yeah, who's this? This is Richard Holloway. I'm calling regarding your mother. That was all it took. My stomach dropped. She passed this morning. No build-up, no soft landing. Just straight to the point. I stared at the wall, not shocked, not devastated, just still. Oh, I said. A pause.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thanks. Another pause. Then, she updated her will 3 days ago. You'll need to attend the reading. There was something in his tone. Not sympathy. Not formality. Something heavier? Need to? I ask. I strongly recommend it. That phrase stuck with me. Strongly recommend. Not suggest. Not consider. Strongly recommend. Like a warning dressed up as advice. When? I asked. Next Wednesday. 10 a.m. I wrote it down on a sticky note like it was a dentist appointment, because that's what my relationship with my mom had become. Routine. Distant. Transactional. The last time we spoke was 4 months before she died. She called to remind me about Madison's anniversary party. Black tie? She said. Don't embarrass us. I told her I wasn't coming. She said, good, one less problem. That was it. That was our last conversation. No love you? No goodbye, just relief. So when the lawyer told me she died, it didn't feel like losing a mother. It felt like closing a chapter that had been over for years. Growing up in our house felt like being an extra in someone else's movie. Madison was the star. Blonde, perfect, always smiling like she belonged in a college brochure. Ethan, my younger brother, was the easygoing side character. Everyone loved him, he fit and me. I was the glitch. Dark hair, dark eyes, features that didn't match anyone. Funny how genetics works. My mom used to say with this tight little smile. But it never sounded like a joke. More like an accusation. At family dinners, she'd point it out casually. Madison has my eyes. Ethan has his father's smile. Then she'd glance at me, and shrug. Lena, well, she's unique. People would laugh. I'd stare at my plate. Because even at 12 years old, I knew what that meant. Unique didn't mean special. It meant not one of us. My dad, well, the man I thought was my dad, never said anything. He was kind in quiet ways. Extra fries when mom wasn't looking. A soft "you okay?" when things got tense. But he never stood up for me. Never corrected her. Never once said, "That's my daughter." He just stayed silent. Like it was easier that way. He died when I was 22. Heart attack. Quick. Final. At the funeral, I stood in the back while people cried like they'd lost the center of their world. I remember watching my mom lean over to her friend and whisper something. I only caught part of it. At least he never knew. I didn't understand it back then, but I never forgot it. Now it echoed in my head like a warning I should have paid attention to. Madison had everything handed to her. Wedding paid for. House down payment, luxury SUV sitting in her driveway like a trophy. She called herself self-made. I called it something else. Ethan drifted through life, job to job, never lasting more than a few months anywhere. But somehow rent always got paid, bills always handled. Because mom took care of him, always. And me, I worked. Scholarships, side jobs, late nights. I built my life from scratch while they built theirs on her credit card. And still, I was the outsider. So when Madison called 3 days before the surgery, I already knew what she was going to say. Mom's going in tomorrow. She said, you don't need to come. Not, do you want to come? Not, she asked about you. Just, you don't need to? I didn't argue, I didn't push, I just said, okay. And that was it. She went in. She didn't come out. Madison posted a picture from the hospital waiting room that night. Her, Ethan, her husband, a few relatives, all gathered together like a perfect little support system. Caption, surrounded by the people she loved most. I stared at that picture for a long time. I wasn't in it. But honestly, I wasn't surprised. I never was. The morning of the will reading, I almost didn't go. I stood in my apartment, staring at my reflection. Simple black dress. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just me. Walking into that room meant stepping back into a place where I never belonged. But if I didn't go, they'd tell the story without me. They'd rewrite everything, erase me one last time, and I wasn't about to let that happen. So I grabbed my keys, drove across town, parked outside that old office building, and walked in. Everyone was already there. Madison at the head of the table, looking like she owned the place. Ethan slouched beside her, bored already, her husband scrolling through his phone, a couple of relatives, and the lawyer, with a folder, and one sealed envelope. My name on it. The room went quiet when I walked in. Madison looked up, surprised.
Oh, you came.
Ethan smirked. Didn't think you would. I didn't respond. I just pulled out the empty chair near the door, sat down, and waited, because something told me this wasn't going to be a normal will reading. And I was right. I just didn't know yet that my mother's final move wasn't meant to give me anything, it was meant to destroy me. But she made one mistake. She underestimated what the truth would do. William Hayes. The name didn't just hang in the air, it detonated. Madison's hand froze mid-motion. Her fingers still wrapped around her designer handbag like she needed something to hold on to. Ethan blinked hard, like if he reset his vision, the words would disappear. They messed up, he said quickly. Too quickly. That's not real. But nobody looked at the lawyer, they all looked at me. Like I was suddenly something else. Not their sister. Not even a mistake. Something worse. An outsider they'd been forced to tolerate, and now finally had proof they were right to. Madison recovered first. She always did. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs, and let out a slow breath. Well, she said, her voice cool, controlled, that explains a lot. There it was. Not shock, not denial, relief. Like she'd just been handed the missing piece. She didn't even realize she'd been waiting for. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This changes things, he muttered. I tilted my head slightly. Does it? I asked. Madison's eyes snapped to mine. Yes, she said sharply. It does. The lawyer cleared his throat, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Legally, it does not, he said carefully. The will stands as written. Lena is named as a beneficiary. A beneficiary. Ethan barked out a laugh. She got a letter. Madison leaned forward, her gaze locked on me like she was already building a case. You're not a Carter, she said. You understand that, right? I let the silence stretch, let her hear herself. Then I said, quietly, I understand more than I ever have. And that was the moment something shifted, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to belong in that room. I wasn't trying to earn a seat at that table. I didn't need it anymore. The lawyer started wrapping up, but nobody was really listening. The energy in the room had changed. Madison was already texting someone. Probably her husband, maybe a lawyer. Ethan kept pacing, muttering under his breath. And me, I picked up the envelope, turned it over in my hands. It felt so small, so light, like it couldn't possibly hold the weight of what it had just done. My mother gave them everything. The house, the car, the money. And me. One sentence that was supposed to humiliate me, expose me, cut me out completely. But instead it explained everything. I stood up, chairs scraped behind me as heads turned. Madison frowned. Where are you going? I slid the envelope into my bag. You got the house? I said calmly. I looked at Ethan. You got the car? Then I met her eyes again. I got the truth. Her jaw tightened. That's not the win you think it is. I gave her a small smile. We'll see. And then I walked out. No drama, no tears. Just done. The air outside felt different. Lighter. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't even realize it. I sat in my car, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. William Hayes. The name echoed in my head. I didn't recognize it. Not from family stories, not from old conversations. Nothing, which meant one thing. My mother didn't just hide the truth. She erased it, completely. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop open. The envelope lay beside me. I didn't need to read it again. I had it memorized. But the name, that was new. I typed it into Google. William Hayes. And hit search. Dozens of results popped up instantly. But one stood out, a photo. A man in his late 60s, sharp features, dark eyes, familiar eyes. My stomach dropped. No way. I clicked the article. William Hayes, former state judge, passes away at 68, judge. Of course. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Decades on the bench. Respected. Known for integrity. Community leader. A life built on reputation and respect. And me? I was the secret he never got to claim. I zoomed in on the photo, studied every detail. The shape of his face, the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes narrowed slightly at the corners. It was like looking into a mirror that finally made sense. For the first time in my life I saw where I came from. And it wasn't the Carter family. It was him. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. So this is why. This is why my mom couldn't stand me. I wasn't just different. I was a reminder. Of a man who didn't choose her. Of a life she didn't get. Of a secret she buried so deep. She turned it into resentment. And I carried that resentment for 31 years without even knowing why. My phone buzzed. Madison. I stared at the screen for a second before answering. What? I said. No greeting, no softness. Straight to it. I hope you're not actually believing that, she snapped. The letter. Yes, the letter, Lena. Mom was sick, she just had surgery coming up. People say crazy things under stress. She rewrote her entire will. I said calmly. Pretty sure she was thinking clearly. That's different. No, it's not. Silence. Then? You're not about to go around telling people this? Are you? I let out a small laugh. It was read out loud in a room full of people. Madison. That ship sailed. Her voice dropped. Cold. Sharp. Then don't make it worse. Worse for who? For all of us. There it was again. Not concern. Not confusion. Control. Always control. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. You always do this, she snapped. You always find a way to make everything about you. I closed my eyes for a second. Took a breath. I just found out my entire life is a lie, I said quietly. Yeah. I think this one gets to be about me. She didn't respond. She just hung up. I stared at my phone for a moment. Then set it down, because for the first time, her opinion didn't matter. The next morning, everything changed. And I mean everything. Because small towns, they don't keep secrets, they feed on them. By noon, people were looking at me differently. At the coffee shop, the barista smiled a little too politely. At work, my coworker kept glancing at me like she wanted to ask something but didn't know how. Even my boss pulled me aside. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. He hesitated. Then said, if you need anything just let me know. That had never happened before. Because suddenly, I wasn't just Lena Carter. I was the girl with the story, the secret, the scandal. And the truth was spreading faster than I could process it. By the afternoon, Madison made her move. A Facebook post. Of course. Not direct, not obvious. Just vague enough to sound innocent. When people show up to take what isn't theirs, remember who was really there. It had over 50 likes in an hour. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't engage. Because I knew exactly what she was doing. Framing the narrative. Controlling the story. Painting herself as the victim. But here's the thing she didn't realize yet. The story wasn't hers to control anymore. Because that evening, I got another call. From the lawyer. And his voice. Different this time. Less formal. More serious. "Lena," he said, "there's something you need to know." I leaned against the counter, heart steady. A pause. Then, "William Hayes set up a trust before he died." My grip tightened on the phone. A trust. Yes. Another pause. He included a provision for a biological child he believed existed. Everything inside me went still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied carefully, "someone has been looking for you for the last 2 years." The room felt smaller. The air heavier. "Why didn't anyone find me?" "Because," he said quietly, "your mother made sure they couldn't." I closed my eyes. And in that moment, everything changed again. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what had been taken from me. And what might still be waiting. "His estate attorney wants to meet you," he continued. I swallowed. "When?" "As soon as possible." I opened my eyes. Looked at the envelope sitting on the counter. The thing that was supposed to destroy me. Turns out, it might be the key to everything. "I'll meet him," I said. And just like that, I stepped into a story my mother spent 31 years trying to erase. What I didn't know yet was that meeting would change my life more than the letter ever could. And not everyone was going to let that happen quietly. "You don't get to take this from us." Madison's voice cracked through my apartment like a gunshot the second I opened the door. No hello. No warning, just accusation. She stood there in heels and anger, mascara slightly smudged like she'd either been crying or trying not to. Behind her, her husband Ryan hovered like backup muscle, arms crossed, jaw tight. I didn't invite them in. They walked in anyway. Because that's what they'd always done, taken space that wasn't theirs. "We need to talk," Madison said, already moving toward my kitchen like she owned it. I closed the door slowly, locked it, turned around. "I don't think we do." She spun to face me, slamming a folder onto the counter. "Yes, we do." Ryan stayed quiet, but his presence was loud. Heavy, judgmental. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Make it quick." Madison opened the folder and pulled out a paper. Typed. Formal looking, but I could tell immediately. It wasn't done by a real lawyer. Too messy. Too emotional. Too desperate. "Sign this," she said, sliding it toward me. I didn't touch it right away. Just looked at her. Or. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Or things get complicated." I picked up the paper. Started reading. My name at the top. A statement acknowledging I was not biologically related to David Carter. Fine, obvious now. Then the next part. I, Lena Carter, hereby waive any and all present and future claims to the Carter family estate. I almost smiled. Almost. Then I kept reading. And that's when it hit. And agree to relinquish any use of the Carter family name moving forward. I looked up slowly. "You want me to give up my last name?" Madison didn't flinch. "It was never really yours." Ryan finally spoke. "It just keeps things clean." Clean. Like I was a stain they could wipe away. I set the paper down gently, walked around the counter, stopped right in front of her. "You came into my home," I said quietly. "To ask me to erase myself?" Her jaw tightened. "You're not thinking clearly." "No," I said. "For the first time in my life, I am." She let out a frustrated breath. "Lena, listen to me. This whole thing with William Hayes. It's messy, it's ugly. And if you start digging into it, it's going to drag all of us down." "All of us?" I echoed. "Yes, this family." I laughed, not loud, not dramatic, just real. "What family?" That hit. I saw it. The flicker in her eyes, but she pushed through it. "You grew up with us. You have our name, that means something." "Apparently not enough to keep," I said, nodding at the paper. Ryan stepped forward slightly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I turned to him. And you are. He stiffened. Her husband. Right. I said. So this doesn't involve you. Madison snapped. It involves all of us. No, I said, my voice steady. It involves me, because I'm the one who just found out my entire life was a lie. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then Madison tried a different approach. Her voice softened. Careful. Strategic. Look, I get that this is a shock, she said. But chasing this money, this story, it's not going to end well for you. There it was. Finally. The truth. You're worried about money, I said. Her expression hardened instantly. I'm worried about what's fair. Fair. I repeated. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. You stood at Mom's funeral and told me I wasn't family. Her lips parted. No words came out. You told me not to come to the hospital. Still nothing. You've spent your entire life treating me like I didn't belong. I pointed at the paper, and now you want me to sign something that makes it official. She swallowed. Lena. No. The word cut clean through the room. Sharp. Final. I'm not signing anything. Ryan exhaled loudly, like he'd expected this. Madison's face flushed red. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, but it's mine to make. She grabbed the paper, shoved it back into the folder, her movements quick. Tense. Uncontrolled. Fine. She snapped. Do whatever you want. She turned toward the door. Then stopped. Without looking back, she said, if you go after that money, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. I tilted my head slightly. And what's that? She finally turned. Eyes cold. A girl chasing a dead man's fortune. I held her gaze, unshaken. Or, I said quietly, a daughter finally finding the truth. That hit harder than anything else. I saw it land. Right in the center. She didn't respond. She just walked out. Ryan followed. Door slammed. Silence. I stood there for a moment, heart steady, hands calm, because something had changed. Something fundamental. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small after a confrontation with her. I felt clear. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, because my mind wouldn't stop moving. William Hayes. A trust. Someone looking for me. For 2 years. While I was living 20 minutes away. Unaware. Unseen. Hidden. I stared at the ceiling. And one thought kept repeating. What else did she hide? The next morning, I drove to the address the lawyer gave me. Hayes and Whitman Legal Group. Big building. Glass windows. The kind of place that screamed money and legacy. I parked. Sat in the car for a second. Took a breath. Then got out. Inside, everything was quiet. Polished. Controlled. A receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. You must be Lena? I nodded. She picked up the phone. Hayes here. A few minutes later, a man in his 60s walked out. Gray hair. Sharp suit. Kind eyes. But there was something else. Recognition. Like he'd been expecting me. Lena, he said, extending his hand. I'm Daniel Whitman. I shook it. Nice to meet you. He studied my face for a second longer than normal. Then smiled slightly. You look just like him. My chest tightened. We walked into his office. Sat down. And just like that, I was sitting across from a man who knew more about my father than I ever would. Whitman opened a file. Thick. Organized. Prepared. William Hayes established a trust 3 years before his death. He began. For who? I asked, even though I already knew. For a biological child he believed existed. My throat went dry. He knew about me. He knew about your mother's pregnancy, Whitman said, but he never knew what happened after that. I looked down at my hands. They had an affair. Whitman nodded slowly. Yes, but it was complicated. I let out a quiet laugh. Of course it was. He leaned forward slightly. Your father tried to find you. That sentence hit harder than anything else so far. He what? He hired an investigator. Reached out through mutual contacts. Even attempted to contact your mother directly. I felt something twist in my chest. And Whitman's expression darkened. She blocked every attempt. Of course she did. Of course. She changed numbers. Moved churches. Cut off anyone who might connect them. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling for a second. Processing. He tried. He actually tried. And she made sure he failed. There's more, Whitman said. I looked at him. There's a provision in the trust. If his biological child is found and confirmed through DNA testing, the assets transfer. My heart started beating faster. What kind of assets? Whitman paused. Then said it plainly. Approximately $600,000 in combined value. The number didn't hit me right away. It just floated there, heavy, unreal. That includes land, investments, and partial estate access. He added. I blinked. This is insane. It's legal. He corrected gently. I let out a breath. Ran a hand through my hair. This wasn't supposed to happen, I said. No. Whitman agreed. It wasn't. Silence. Then I asked the question that mattered most. What do I have to do? He closed the file. Take a DNA test. Simple. Clinical final. And if it matches, I asked. He held my gaze. Then everything changes. I swallowed. Because deep down, I already knew it would. But here's what I didn't know yet. That this test wouldn't just confirm who my father was, it would expose everything my mother tried to bury. And when that truth came out, it wasn't just going to affect me. It was going to shake everyone. Especially Madison. I lied because I couldn't stand looking at you. That line wasn't said to me. Not yet. But I would read it later. In my mother's handwriting. And when I did, it would hit harder than anything Madison ever said to my face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before the truth broke everything open, I had to wait. 10 days. That's how long the DNA test took. 10 days of pretending my life was normal. 10 days of going to work, answering emails, smiling at coworkers like my identity wasn't sitting in a lab somewhere being analyzed under a microscope. 10 days of silence from Madison, which somehow felt louder than all her shouting. I gave the sample on a Monday morning. Clinical office. White walls. Fluorescent lights. A nurse who didn't know she was holding the key to my entire existence. Just a cheek swab, she said. Like it was nothing. Like it wasn't about to rewrite 31 years of my life. I sat there afterward, staring at the sterile countertop. And for the first time, I felt scared. Not of the result, but of what it would mean. Because if it came back positive, everything my mom ever said, every look, every comment, every cold shoulder, would finally have a reason, and I didn't know if that would feel like closure, or betrayal on a deeper level. The days dragged. Work became mechanical. Numbers made sense. People didn't. My coworker Jess tried to distract me with small talk. You good? She asked one afternoon, leaning against my cubicle wall. Yeah, I said automatically. She raised an eyebrow. That sounded fake. I gave a small smile. It was. She didn't push. Just nodded and said, if you need coffee or a distraction, I'm your girl. Simple. Easy. No judgment. It hit me then. Strangers had shown me more kindness in a week than my own family had in years. By day 5, the town had fully caught up. People didn't say it directly. They never do. But I felt it. At the grocery store. At the gas station. At the gym. That subtle shift in energy. Curiosity. Whispers. Recognition. I wasn't invisible anymore. And weirdly, I didn't hate it. Because at least now, they were seeing me. Not the version my mother curated. The real one. Day 7, Madison broke her silence. Text message. 3 bubbles. No greeting. If you go through with this, we're contesting the will. Another message. You're not entitled to anything from him. And then, think carefully before you embarrass yourself. I stared at the screen. Didn't respond, didn't need to, because for the first time, her threats felt empty, like noise. Day 9, I got another call. Not from Madison, not from Ethan. From Whitman. Results are in, he said. My stomach dropped instantly. 1. Tomorrow morning. In person. Of course. No email, no phone call. This kind of truth needed a room. A chair. A moment. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even a little. I sat on my couch with the TV on, not watching it, just listening to the noise. Waiting. Thinking. Replaying memories. My mom correcting people when they called me her daughter. That slight hesitation before she said my name. The way she'd look at me sometimes. Like I reminded her of something she didn't want to remember. And now I knew. I wasn't just a reminder. I was proof. The next morning, I got to Whitman's office 10 minutes early. Sat in my car. Hands gripping the steering wheel. Breathing slow, steady. Then I got out, walked in. Receptionist smiled. "You can go right in. No waiting, no delay." This was it. Whitman was already seated when I entered. File open, expression serious. But not cold, not distant. Something else, something human. "Lena," he said. I sat down across from him. "Just tell me." No small talk, no build-up. I didn't want it. Took a breath. Then said, 99.98% match. Everything went quiet. Not the room, not the world. Just inside me. "You are the biological daughter of William Hayes." There it was. Confirmed. Final. Irrefutable. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just sat there, because the truth didn't feel shocking anymore. It felt inevitable. Like I'd always known, just never had proof. Whitman continued, his voice steady. "This activates the trust." I blinked. "Right, the trust. The thing Madison was so scared of. The total value," he said, "is approximately $620,000. The number landed this time. Hard. Real. Breakdown. I asked automatically. Because that's what I do. Numbers first, emotions later. He gave a small, almost impressed smile. 40 acres of farmland generating annual income. An investment account currently valued at around $340,000. And partial residential rights to a guest property on the Hayes estate. I nodded slowly, processing, calculating, comparing. My mom's entire estate. Didn't even come close. She thought she left me nothing. She left me the key to something bigger. "You also have the option to meet his daughter," Whitman added. I looked up. "He has a daughter." "Had," he corrected gently. "She's still alive. Her name is Claire Hayes. She knows about you. She's been hoping this day would come." My chest tightened. A sister. Not Madison. Not someone who spent years tearing me down. Someone who wanted to meet me. "That's a lot," I said. "It is," he agreed. Silence settled between us. Then he said something that hit deeper than everything else. "Your father looked for you." I closed my eyes. Just for a second. Because that mattered. More than the money. More than the land. More than anything. He didn't give up. Whitman continued. He just couldn't get through. I nodded slowly, because now I understood something I never had before. I wasn't unwanted. I was hidden. There's a difference. A huge one. And it changed everything. "I'll meet her," I said finally. Whitman nodded. "I'll arrange it." I stood up, shook his hand, walked out, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was walking toward something, not away. But the moment I stepped outside, my phone rang. "Madison, of course." I answered. "What now?" Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was barely holding it together. "Tell me you didn't do it." I looked up at the sky, clear. Blue. Calm. I did. Silence. Then, "You're unbelievable." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just done pretending." "You think this makes you better than us?" I laughed softly. "This isn't about being better, it's about being honest. You're chasing money. I'm claiming truth. You're destroying this family." I paused, then said the one thing she wasn't ready to hear. "There was never a family to destroy." That one hit. I heard it in her breathing, sharp. Uneven. "You're not one of us," she snapped. I smiled. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. "I know," I said. "And for the first time, I'm okay with that." I hung up. Didn't wait for her response. Didn't need it. Because something inside me had finally settled. A truth I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't lose a family. I was never given one. But now I had a chance to find something real. And that chance had a name, Claire Hayes. What I didn't know yet was that meeting her would uncover one last secret my mother took to her grave. And that secret would change how I saw everything. Even her. "I think you should sit down before you read this." Claire didn't say it like a warning. She said it like someone who already knew the impact. Like she'd been carrying something heavy, and was finally about to set it down. But I didn't sit. I stayed standing in the middle of her father's study, my fingers still brushing the edge of a desk that should have been part of my childhood. But wasn't. "Just show me," I said. My voice was steady, too steady. Claire hesitated for half a second, then she nodded, and handed it to me. A leather-bound journal. Worn, age, used. My chest tightened the second I touched it. "This was my dad's?" I asked. She shook her head. No? A pause? It's your mom's. Everything inside me went still. My mom's. I repeated. Claire nodded slowly. He kept it. For years. That didn't make sense. Why would he have her journal? Why would he keep something that personal? Unless he didn't keep it out of love, Claire said quietly, like she'd read my thoughts. He kept it because it was the only thing that ever explained why you disappeared. My grip tightened on the journal, and suddenly, I didn't want to open it. Because whatever was inside, it wasn't going to be kind. But I opened it anyway. Because I was done being afraid of the truth. The first page was dated 32 years ago. The handwriting was sharp, controlled, familiar. I told William today. He said he wouldn't leave his wife. I swallowed hard. Read the next line. He said he cared about me, but his family comes first. I am not his family. I am his mistake. My chest tightened. Not because it hurt me, because it told me everything about her. I flipped the page. I'm pregnant. The words hit harder. Short. Final. I told him. He wants to be involved. He says he'll support the child. I held my breath. And then, I said no. My heart dropped. If I can't have him, he doesn't get to have her. Her. Me. I kept reading, my hands steady. Even though something inside me was starting to crack. That's fair. The word, fair, was underlined twice. I let out a slow breath. Fair. That's what she called it. Taking a child away from their father. Punishing a man through his daughter. Fair. I flipped through more pages. Each one worse than the last. She looks like him. I hate that. Every time she smiles, I see him. I wish she didn't have his eyes. My throat tightened. Not tears. Something else. Something deeper. Understanding. Not forgiveness. Never that, but understanding. She didn't hate me for who I was. She hated me for who I reminded her of. I kept turning pages. Faster now. Needing to see it all. After my dad, the man I thought was my dad, died, there was another entry. William called again. His lawyer reached out. I hung up both times. I froze. Read it again. He tried again. Even years later. And she still blocked him. The girl will never know. I closed my eyes for a second. Because that line, that was the one that hurt. Not the insults, not the resentment. That, the decision, the choice. She didn't just hide the truth, she committed to it, every single day, for decades. I flipped to the last entry, dated 1 week before her surgery. My stomach dropped before I even read it. The letter will tell her everything. I exhaled slowly. Here it comes. Let her carry his name. Let her find out the man she came from chose his real family over hers. I shook my head slightly. No. I whispered, that wasn't true. He didn't choose. He was denied. But she didn't care. She wrote her version of the story. And forced me to live in it. Then the final line. Let her feel what I felt. I closed the journal, slowly, carefully. Because now I understood everything. This wasn't about me. It never was. I was collateral damage. A living reminder of a love story that didn't end the way she wanted. So she rewrote it. Turned herself into the victim, turned him into the villain, and turned me into the consequence. Claire watched me quietly. Didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. Just waited. You knew? I asked finally. She nodded. Some of it. Not all. Why didn't you tell me? Her expression softened. We didn't know where you were, she said. And when we tried to find out, your mom made it impossible. I looked down at the journal in my hands. She didn't just hide me, I said quietly. She erased me. Claire stepped closer. And my dad never stopped looking. That hit again. Different this time. Not pain. Something warmer. Something steady. He had a picture of you, she added. My head snapped up. What? She smiled softly. Come here. She walked over to the desk, picked up a small frame, and handed it to me. I froze. It was me, 5 years old. Gap-toothed smile, messy hair, bright eyes. I didn't even remember that photo. Where did he get this? I asked. Claire shrugged. We don't know. Someone sent it anonymously years ago. Aunt Patricia. It had to be. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was this. He had it. He kept it. On his desk. Where he could see it, every day. He used to call you the one I couldn't find. Claire said softly. My chest tightened. And this time I almost broke. Not from pain, From something I'd never really felt before. Being wanted. Even from a distance. Even without knowing me. He wanted me. And that changed everything. I set the photo down gently. Looked around the room. At the books. The desk. The life I never knew. I should have been here. I said quietly. Claire nodded. Yeah, you should have. No sugarcoating. No pretending. Just truth. And somehow that felt better. We walked outside after that. The air was warm, quiet, peaceful. Nothing like the chaos I'd been living in. You can stay here? Claire said. In the guest cottage. It's part of the trust. I looked out across the land. Open. Free mine. It didn't feel real. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say yes, she smiled. I laughed softly. Okay, yes. And just like that I had a place. Not borrowed, not temporary, mine. But peace doesn't last long when the past isn't done with you. Because the moment I got back to my apartment, my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, Madison, Ethan, unknown numbers. I opened one message from Madison. You think you won. This isn't over. Another. We're taking this to court. And then. You don't get to walk away with everything. I stared at the screen. Calm, unbothered. Because she still didn't get it. This was never about winning. It was about truth. And the truth was already out, but what she didn't realize was that I now had something stronger than anything she could throw at me. Proof. Not just from a letter. Not just from DNA, but from my mother's own words. Her journal. Her confession. Her truth. And if she thought I was going to stay quiet about it, she was about to learn something. For the first time in my life. I wasn't going to shrink. I wasn't going to stay silent. And I definitely wasn't going to let her rewrite the story again, because the next move was mine. And this time, I wasn't playing defense. You really want to do this in court? Madison's voice echoed across the hallway, sharp enough to turn heads. We were standing outside courtroom B, same building. Same polished floors. Same cold air that always made everything feel more serious than it already was. Only this time. I wasn't the one on the outside looking in. I was part of the case. I turned slowly to face her. She looked different. Still put together. Still polished. But there were cracks now. Small ones. Around her eyes. In the way her shoulders tensed. In the way she kept glancing at the courtroom doors, like she wasn't as confident as she wanted to be. You're the one who filed, I said calmly. She scoffed. Because you forced my hand. I raised an eyebrow. I forced you. Yes, she snapped. You showed up out of nowhere with some story about a dead judge, and suddenly everything is supposed to change. I let that sit for a second. Then, I didn't show up out of nowhere, I said quietly. I've been here my whole life. You just never saw me. That landed. I saw it. But just like always, she pushed past it. You think this is going to end well for you? She asked. I tilted my head slightly. It already has. Her jaw tightened. Before she could respond, the courtroom doors opened. Carter case. The clerk called. Madison straightened instantly. Mask back on. Control restored. Let's go, she muttered, brushing past me. I followed. Because I wasn't running anymore. Inside, everything felt official. Judge on the bench, lawyers at their tables. Files stacked neatly like they held pieces of people's lives. Which they did. Madison sat beside her attorney, a younger guy. Confident posture, overconfident energy, the kind of lawyer who talks more than he listens. I sat with Mr. Holloway, my mom's estate attorney. Steady. Unshakable. The judge glanced over her glasses. Let's proceed. Madison's lawyer stood first. Laurel Carter's final will is being challenged on the grounds of mental instability and undue influence. I almost smiled. Undue influence. From me. The daughter she hadn't spoken to in 4 months. Even the judge looked skeptical. He continued anyway. The sealed letter presented at the reading is unreliable, emotionally driven, and should not be considered valid evidence regarding inheritance implications. Translation. Erase the truth. Rewrite the story. Again, Holloway didn't even stand up right away. He just waited. Let the argument hang. Then calmly rose to his feet. Laurel Carter was 63 years old, he said. She drove herself to my office. She reviewed her will thoroughly. She signed it in full mental capacity with 2 witnesses present. He paused. Let that sink in. The sealed letter was written by her own hand and included intentionally as part of her final wishes. Another pause, and most importantly, he turned slightly, looked at Madison's lawyer. The contents of that letter have now been independently verified. The room shifted. I felt it. Everyone did. The judge leaned forward. Verified how? Holloway didn't rush. Didn't dramatize. Just stated the truth through certified DNA testing. Silence. Madison stiffened beside her attorney. This confirms, Holloway continued, that Lena Carter is the biological daughter of William Hayes, as stated in the letter. The judge nodded slowly. Measured. Thoughtful. Then looked at Madison's lawyer. Do you have evidence to refute this? He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Your Honor, we believe the letter itself. That wasn't my question. The judge cut in. He swallowed. No, Your Honor. Game over. Just like that. But Madison wasn't done. She stood up abruptly. This isn't fair. The judge's expression hardened instantly. Sit down, Ms. Carter. This changes everything, Madison insisted. She's not even part of this family. The judge's voice turned cold. She is named in the will. But she's not. Sit down. Madison froze. Then slowly lowered herself into her chair. But the damage? Already done, because now everyone in that room saw it. Not a grieving daughter. Not a victim. Just someone trying to hold on to control. The judge turned back to the case. Based on the evidence presented, there is no basis to invalidate the will. Final. Clean. Done. The will stands as written. The gavel didn't need to slam. The words were enough. Madison stared straight ahead, frozen. Her attorney started gathering papers quickly. Avoiding eye contact, Ethan sat in the back row. Quiet, watching everything, for once not taking sides. I stood up slowly. No rush, no reaction. Just steady. As I walked past Madison, she grabbed my arm. Hard. This isn't over, she whispered. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Calm, unshaken. Yes, I said quietly. It is. I pulled my arm free and walked out. The air outside felt different, again, but this time, not lighter. Stronger. Like something had finally settled into place. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Lena. I turned. Ethan, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly slouched, same as always. But his expression, different, honest. For the first time in my life, I didn't know, he said. No excuses. No attitude, just truth. I studied him for a second. I know. He nodded slowly. I mean it. I didn't know about any of this. About you. About him? I believe you? And I did. Because Ethan, he followed, he didn't lead. Never had. He shifted his weight, looked down, then back at me. I don't expect anything, he said. I just wanted to say that. I crossed my arms lightly. The door was never closed, Ethan. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? You just never walked through it. That hit. He nodded. Slow. Understanding. Yeah, he said. That sounds about right. A small silence settled between us. Not awkward. Just new. I got a job, he added suddenly, at a mechanic shop. I raised an eyebrow. Consistently? He smirked slightly. Yeah, consistently. Good. Another pause. Then, Madison's not going to let this go, he said. I shrugged. She doesn't have to. But I'm not fighting her anymore, I said. He looked confused. You just won in court. I shook my head. This wasn't about winning. He studied me, trying to understand, maybe for the first time. Then he nodded. Okay, simple, honest, and weirdly, that was enough. He turned to leave. Then stopped. Hey Lena. Yeah. I'm glad you found the truth. I gave a small smile. Me too. He walked away. And just like that, something shifted between us. Not fixed, not perfect, but possible. I got in my car, sat there for a second, hands resting on the wheel, thinking. $600,000. A new family, a past uncovered, a future wide open. And somehow, none of that felt as important as one simple thing. I wasn't invisible anymore, but just as I started the engine, unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. Hello. A pause. Then a woman's voice. Soft, nervous. Is this Lena? Yes. Another pause. My name is Claire Hayes. My breath caught slightly. I know who you are? I was hoping we could meet? she said. My grip tightened on the phone. Because this was it. The part of my life that wasn't built on lies. The part that might actually be real. I'd like that, I said. She exhaled softly. Good, there's something I want to show you. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. What is it? I asked. A pause. Then. Something your mother never wanted you to see. And just like that, I realized the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because if I thought I already knew everything, I was wrong. There was still one piece missing. One final truth. And whatever it was about to change everything again. I almost told you the truth when you were 12. Aunt Rachel's voice shook as she said it, like the words had been sitting in her throat for years, waiting for permission to come out. We were sitting on the porch of the cottage. Late afternoon, golden light stretching across the fields, everything calm. Too calm for what she was about to say. I turned slowly. You knew. Not angry, not yet, just steady, she nodded. Tears already forming. Not everything, she said, but enough. I leaned back in the chair, crossed my arms. Define enough. She swallowed hard. Your mom told me one night, Thanksgiving, years ago, she'd had a few glasses of wine and she just said it. Said what? That you weren't David's. Simple. Blunt. Life changing. And she said it like it was gossip. I let out a slow breath. And you just kept that to yourself? Her eyes filled. I was scared of her. That answer didn't surprise me. Everyone was scared of my mom in some way. She had that kind of presence, control, sharp edges hidden under polite smiles. What exactly were you scared she'd do? I asked. Rachel looked down at her hands. You don't understand what she was like back then. I almost laughed. You'd be surprised. She shook her head. No, you don't. Not really, because you were the one thing she never let herself fully lose control around. That made me pause. What does that mean? Rachel looked up. And for the first time, there was no hesitation in her voice. It means she didn't ignore you because she didn't care. I frowned slightly. She ignored you because she cared too much, and hated herself for it. I stared at her, trying to process that. Because it didn't fit, it didn't match the woman I knew. The woman who erased me, excluded me, treated me like I didn't belong. That doesn't make sense, I said. I know. Rachel replied softly. But it's the truth. Silence settled between us. The kind that forces you to sit with something uncomfortable. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed. My stomach dropped instantly. What is that? She hesitated, then held it out to me. This is what your mom wrote before she changed her mind. I didn't move right away, because something about the way she said that, before she changed her mind, made my chest tighten. What do you mean? I asked. Rachel's voice cracked. She was going to tell you. Years ago. Everything inside me went still. She wrote you a letter, Rachel continued, explaining everything. About your father, about why she hid it. My hand slowly reached for the envelope. But she never gave it to me. Rachel shook her head. No? Why not? A tear slipped down her cheek. Because the next morning she burned it? I froze. What? She panicked. Rachel said it would ruin everything. That it was better if you never knew. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. Heart pounding now. Then what is this? Rachel took a shaky breath. It's a copy. I looked up sharply. You kept it? I couldn't just let it disappear, she said. Not completely. My fingers tightened around the paper. This was it. The last piece. The one thing my mom never wanted me to see. You should read it, Rachel said quietly. I nodded. But I didn't open it right away. Because for some reason, this felt heavier than everything else. The journal showed me her anger, her resentment, her bitterness. But this was something else. This was the version of her that almost told the truth. And I didn't know if I was ready to meet that version. But I opened it anyway. Because I'd come too far to stop now. The paper was fragile, the handwriting softer than the journal, less sharp, less controlled. Lena, just my name, no distance, no coldness. I don't know how to start this without breaking something. I swallowed hard. Read the next line. The truth is, I've been breaking things for years. My chest tightened. This didn't sound like the same woman. I lied to you about who you are. About where you come from, and I've told myself it was to protect you. A pause. Ink slightly smudged. Like she hesitated while writing it. But the truth is I was protecting myself. I exhaled slowly, because finally, there it was. Honesty. I loved your father. The words hit differently now. Not defensive, not bitter, just real. And when he didn't choose me, I turned that pain into something ugly. I felt my throat tighten. Not from anger. From recognition. Because I'd already seen that ugliness. Lived with it. Every day. I looked at you and saw him. And instead of loving that part of you, I resented it. My grip on the paper tightened. I told myself it was easier to keep the truth from you. That you didn't need to know. That it didn't matter. Another pause. Longer this time. But it did matter. I blinked. Because those words. They were everything I'd needed to hear my entire life. You mattered. You always did. My vision blurred slightly. I forced myself to keep reading. I just didn't know how to fix what I'd already broken. Silence filled my chest. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Honest. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, because I didn't. But I hope one day you understand that I was human, flawed, weak, and afraid of losing everything I built. I let out a shaky breath. Because that was the closest she'd ever come to admitting the truth. Not in the journal, not in the envelope. Here. In a letter she never sent. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to give you this. That line hit hardest. Because she didn't. She never found that courage. I hope you find the truth one day. Even if it doesn't come from me. I closed my eyes for a second. Because I did, just not the way she planned. Love, Mom. I stared at that last word. Love. A word she never said to me out loud. Not once. And now, it was sitting there. Too late. I folded the letter carefully. Set it down on my lap. Silence stretched across the porch. Rachel didn't speak. Didn't ask. Just waited. Finally, I looked up. She knew. I said quietly. Rachel nodded. She always knew. I shook my head slightly. No, she knew she was wrong. That was different. Important. Rachel wiped her eyes. She just didn't know how to fix it. I stood up slowly. Walked to the edge of the porch. Looked out over the land. My land now. My life. My truth. And for the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something close to release. Because now I had everything. Her anger. Her truth. Her regret. The full picture. No more guessing. No more wondering. Just clarity. And clarity is power. I turned back to Rachel. Why give this to me now? She hesitated. Then said. Because you deserve to know who she really was. I nodded slowly. Yeah. I said. I do. But here's the thing. Knowing who she really was didn't change what she did. It just made it complete. And now, there was only one thing left to do. Let it go. Not for her. For me. Because holding on to it, that would just keep me stuck in her story. And I was done living in it. I was ready to write my own. What I didn't realize yet was that my final step forward would require one last confrontation. Not with Madison. Not with the past. But with myself. I don't hate you anymore. The words came out of my mouth before I even realized I was going to say them. And the second they did, the room went completely still. Madison blinked. Once. Slow. Like her brain couldn't process what it just heard. We were standing in the living room of the house. Her house now, the same one I grew up in, same walls, same furniture, same energy that used to make me feel small every time I walked in, but not anymore. Now, it just felt like a place. Nothing more, nothing mine. I didn't say I forgive you. I added calmly. Let's not get carried away. That snapped her out of it. Her posture stiffened instantly. Good, she said, crossing her arms. Because I'm not asking for forgiveness. Of course she wasn't. Madison didn't apologize. She adjusted. She defended. She controlled. Always. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, watching both of us like he was stuck in the middle of a game he didn't sign up for. Which, to be fair, he was. I didn't come here to fight, I said. Madison let out a dry laugh. Then why are you here? I took a slow breath. Looked around the room one last time. Every memory, every moment, Every version of me that tried to belong here. Then I looked back at her. To finish it. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Finish what? This. I gestured between us. This thing we've been doing our entire lives. She scoffed. You mean you trying to play victim? There it was. The old script. The old version of her. But it didn't hit the same anymore. Because I wasn't playing that role. Not anymore. No, I said quietly. I mean you pretending I was never part of this family, while still needing me to be. That made her pause. Just for a second. You needed me to be the problem. I continued. Because as long as I was the outsider you got to be the perfect one. Her jaw tightened. That's not true. It is, I said. And you know it. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. Ethan shifted slightly on the couch. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend her. Just listened. I spent years trying to understand why I wasn't enough for you, I said. My voice didn't shake. Didn't break. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. I thought maybe if I worked harder, or stayed quieter, or didn't push back, you'd finally see me. Madison looked away. First time ever. But the truth is, I continued, you saw me exactly how you wanted to. That hit. I saw it land. Not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet truth settling in. And I let that define me, I said. For way too long. I took a step closer. Not aggressive, not emotional, just clear. But I'm done with that now. She finally looked back at me. Eyes sharper. Guard up. Congratulations, she said coldly. You found your real family. You got your money. What more do you want? I smiled slightly. Not because it was funny. Because she still didn't get it. I didn't come here to take anything from you. Then why are you here? I held her gaze. To give something back. That confused her. I could see it. Ethan too. What are you talking about? He asked. I reached into my bag. Pulled out an envelope. Set it on the table between us. Madison didn't touch it. What is that? My last tie to this house, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Explain. I'm not contesting anything, I said. The house is yours. The car, the money, all of it. Ethan sat up straighter. Wait, what? Madison stared at me, suspicious. Why? I shrugged lightly. Because I don't need it. That's not how this works, she said quickly. You don't just? Yes. I cut in. That's exactly how this works. Silence again. But this time, different. Because now, she wasn't in control of it. I already have everything I need, I continued. A home, a future, the truth. I paused, then added. And something you never gave me. Her expression tightened. What's that? Peace. That word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. Because that's what this was really about. Not money. Not inheritance. Not even the truth. Peace. And I had it. She didn't. You think this makes you better than me? She asked quietly. I shook my head. No. Then what does it make you? I met her eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed her to understand. It makes me free. That hit harder than anything else, because there was nothing she could say to that. No argument. No manipulation. No control. Just truth. Ethan stood up slowly, ran a hand through his hair. This is crazy, he muttered. Yeah, I said. It kind of is. Madison finally picked up the envelope. Opened it. Read it. Her expression didn't change much. But I saw it. That flicker. That moment of realization. I wasn't coming back. Not as the version she knew, not at all. You're really walking away, she said. I nodded. Yeah, just like that. I thought about it for a second. Then smiled slightly. No. I looked around the room one last time. All the years, all the memories, all the versions of me that tried to stay. It took me 31 years to get here. Silence. Then I turned toward the door. And started walking. Lena, I stopped, not turning around yet. Because something in her voice had changed, just a little. Not soft, not kind. But less sharp. What? I asked. A pause, longer than usual. Then, do you ever think about what it would have been like? I turned slowly. What? If things were different, she said. None of this happened. I held her gaze. Thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I said the only honest answer I had. No. She blinked. Surprised. Why not? I shrugged lightly. Because then I wouldn't be who I am now. That was it. That was the truth. Not bitter, not angry. Just real. I opened the door, stepped outside, and didn't look back. Because I didn't need to. The past wasn't chasing me anymore, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from it either. I walked to my car, sat down, hands resting on the wheel, same as before, but everything felt different now. Lighter, clearer, mine. I started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, and drove forward, not toward something I lost, but towards something I chose. And as the house disappeared in my rearview mirror, I realized something. Family isn't the people who raise you, it's the people who choose you. And for the first time in my life, I finally chose myself. And that was enough.